Yeah, hello there. You're very welcome along to Allianz League's Press Pack, where we discuss all the major stories dominating the GAA world. I'm delighted to be joined tonight by Malachy Clerkin of the Irish Times and Colm Keys of the Irish Independent. You're both welcome along, gents.
Cheers, Damian.
Yeah, Colm, we were chatting about the weekend gone by. Another fine win for Galway football. Pádraig Joyce's 4 National League games played now, lads. They're averaging 19 points a game. Maybe over 7 league games last year was 13 points. But everybody's talking about it seems like the shackles have been taken off, Colm. I'd say Kevin Walsh is probably sick of hearing these reviews, but what's your opinion? Like, are they rejuvenated under Pádraig Joyce?
Well, first of all, Galway have been a very strong league team over the last 2 seasons in the regulation league games. They reached the league final in the first year. I think they probably won more games in the campaigns, the actual regulation games, than Dublin over the last 2 years. They lost very few. They lost to Dublin, they lost to Tyrone last year, but previous to that they'd won all their games, so they were actually winning games. But I think it's probably the style of play, and Pádraig Joyce from the outset clearly wanted to play attacking football. And I think I was down at the Kerry game after the Kerry game. They lost that by a point. They created 6 goal chances that night. They ripped the Kerry defence apart. Shane Walsh went through them like an exocet that night, and afterwards Pádraig Joyce was reviewing how they lost their grip on the game, and he pinned it down to a few players hitting the reverse gear. And what he said that night was, we're trying to coach that, we're trying to remove that from Galway football. So clearly the handbrake is off. Galway have been a strong league team, as I said at the outset, but there's an encouragement there to go and play on the front foot, get at it, and I think symptomatic of that is the way Shane Walsh has been playing. He has been absolutely unplayable at times. It's been a joy to watch him. He was very good in last year's league too. Have to say he was very good, but he is unconfined in every way now. The fact that he was made captain, it looks like an inspired move. He's just been coached to play now.
They look freed in a way. They look like there was, I forget who it was, but there was at one stage on Sunday where one of their sort of half-backs was coming forward and he went to actually turn around to play a kind of a lateral hand pass, but you could nearly see his mind working in real time, and he went, oh, I'm not allowed to do that anymore. It's as if a lateral pass has been outlawed, or as if, you know, kicking the ball backwards, definitely outlawed. You know, we don't do that. We don't fall back. We keep trying to go forwards at all times. Whether that works in the long term, whether it works against better teams on heavier pitches, all of that sort of stuff, you would imagine this style of play would work better. But
I thought last Sunday in Tuam that Tyrone would really set a strong defensive trap for them. Now, obviously, the game went away from Tyrone with 2 red cards, and then what happened, Colin McShane, and that impacts on colleagues when they see that, and they fell apart. But notwithstanding that, in the first quarter and right through the first half, indeed, some of the scores and some of the kick passing were of the highest order from Galway. And clearly,
this is what we have thought for years, though, with them, isn't it? Like, you know, I've been at Galway games over the last few years, and you're looking at them and you're going, like, they're just not using these players to best effect. Like, look what could be in these players. And nobody at the start held Galway's style of play against Kevin Walsh because they needed a defensive structure. Everybody could see that.
They just didn't evolve quick enough. They just, and if you recall, Donegal had their system in 2011, but they evolved brilliantly in 2012, and that didn't happen quick enough for Kevin Walsh. And it didn't happen last year, and I think injuries impacted. We were talking about Damian Comer was out for the entire season until the last few minutes of the Mayo Championship game. He was missing Sean Kelly, who was turned into a very fine full-back. He picked up McShane last week. He scored a goal against Donegal. If you think they've scored 7 goals this season, 3 of them have come from cornerbacks. Johnny Heaney.
Can you guys appreciate how difficult it was for Kevin Walsh, though, guys? Because from a county where Liam Salmon wrote a technical manual on the kick, the art of kicking the ball, and the purest game that they played, that you now see. Well, Galway got ripped apart by Tipperary in Croke Park in an All-Ireland quarter-final. They got cleaned, and you had Damian Comer and Shane Walsh tracking back, and it didn't look good.
At the start, people, you know, you wear a bit of that because every good team starts with its defence, and they had to have a year of that. But it was when they didn't kick on. It was, I really honestly thought, and I thought it at the time, the Super 8's game against Monaghan in Salt Hill, where they were through and they played like a team that had nothing to play for.
It really was.
It was so deflationary. And whereas you look at this you're sort of imagining if Pádraig Joyce is over that team playing the way they are now, they don't go out to contain in that game. They don't go out to give Monaghan a sniff of getting through to an All-Ireland semi-final. They go out to hammer them. They go out to play on the front foot. That's what you expect from this team now, even only after 4 games.
And obviously the Galway public seem to be getting behind this team, whereas they were a little bit standoffish over the last few years because of the style of play. Galway football traditionally has liked to express itself.
And because of what Corofin were doing as well.
Of course,
in the background.
there is that too. There is that too running.
And actually, the involvement is one thing, Mal, but you know, the infusion of Corofin players into the Galway team hasn't been seamless. Martin Farrer gets his start this weekend. That'll be interesting because he deserves a shot now too, you know.
There's plenty of them do. Like, it was great to see Ronan Steed, you know, kicking what he kicked 3 points from play, long range points. But even that there the other day, that is something that you need to kind of not take with a pinch of salt, but you have to wonder, you know, kicked points from just outside the 45. Who are the team that we all look at? Who are the best team in the country? Dublin.
Yeah.
Dublin don't do that. So how does that translate?
I would actually question how
summer?
many, and there's 10. There are 10 Corofin players in the Galway squad. I question how many will actually make the championship team.
Will Kieran Malloy make
when it comes to it? I don't think so. I think Liam Silk will make it. I think he's another attacking threat that Pádraig Joyce will obviously look to utilise.
A word for his backroom team as well. I mean, in John Divley, you've got a coach at the cutting edge, like Sigerson Cup success. Is tuned into the modern day player as well, and will tighten up that defence. He's got work to do as well, of course.
It's 4 games.
Yeah,
they have so much to do. But the thing is with Galway, we don't know what Galway's ceiling is. You see other teams, Monaghan have started the league very well, but you kind of, best will in the world, you kind of think you know what their ceiling is. But Galway, you know, Galway could get a run, could catch somebody in an All-Ireland semi-final. You know, there's no... It's presumably it's tradition. It's Pádraig Joyce coming in. It's all of that.
It's exciting.
There is something to get excited about that.
And he's got the bounce, but there will be bumps in the road. There was bumps in the road for Jim Gavin. You know, Jim Gavin's philosophy was all-out attack at all times, and they obviously won an All-Ireland in 2013, and they came to the 2014 All-Ireland semi-final against Donegal. Fell into a trap. Yes. That's coming down the road for Galway, surely too. And it could happen in Navan next week against the bottom team. Who knows? It could come quickly, and it will happen. But they have to be credited for the approach and what Joyce has said.
Across county borders, excitement is not the word I'd use in Mayo. Intrigue, I think, for the rest of us is probably a word I'd use. And the Mayo benefactor, Tim O'Leary, County Board ceased all dialogue with him during the week on the back of a tweet at the weekend where he expressed his opinion that James Horan should be released from his position. Joining me now to discuss this latest happening in Mayo GAA is the Mayo News sports editor and, of course, our top commentator here at Air Sport as well, Mike Finnerty. Mike, how are you tonight?
Good evening, Damian.
Mike, can you just give us a small bit of background about Tim O'Leary? Who is he and what has he done for Mayo GAA?
Well, that's a very good question. Tim O'Leary, I suppose, came to all our attention back in 2018 initially when he was introduced to the former County Board Chairman Mike Kennelly. Very quickly, Tim O'Leary offered his support, mainly in a financial sense, was very open and said he wanted to do whatever he could do to help the Mayo senior football team and Mayo GAA in general achieve their goals and become better on and off the field. And certainly in the early stages of the relationship, it looked like it was full steam ahead. The high point of the relationship in hindsight would have to be last summer when the Mayo GAA International Supporters Foundation, which was founded and chaired by Mr. O'Leary, organised a very successful gala banquet fundraiser on the weekend of the Mayo New York Connacht Championship game. That event raised in and around €250,000 by all accounts, and at that stage on the night, Mike Kennelly, the former County Board Chairman, he described Mr. O'Leary as one of Mayo's best ever supporters. So at that stage, obviously, everyone was pretty much rowing in the one direction. But within a matter of months, it began to become obvious that the relationship between the top officials in the Mayo County Board and Tim O'Leary was starting to become strained, mainly due to the fact that Tim O'Leary said he had been given assurances around the terms and conditions of how that money raised in New York would be paid across to Mayo GAA. Certain criteria would have to be met before that money would be transferred, and Mr. O'Leary felt those criteria weren't being met. He issued, or he said he had issues around governance in Mayo GAA, and then I think at this stage most people know over the last 2 or 3 months there's been a soap opera of sorts playing out between county board meetings being held in camera, the foundation releasing statements, the county board releasing counter statements, a lot of he said, they said, back and forth, a lot of it playing out on social media and in the mainstream media. Until last month, when it looked like peace had finally broken out, when the new county board chairman, Liam Moffat, and the director general of the GAA, Tom Ryan, were two people who sat around a table with Tim O'Leary, hammered out what we were told at the time was an agreement that was acceptable to all sides, and that they would put their differences behind them, work together for the betterment of Mayo GAA, and the money would be paid across and they would continue to work together. But obviously, as you mentioned in your introduction, that all changed on Monday night when the executive officers of the Mayo County Board met for a couple of hours to discuss their reaction to that tweet sent by Tim O'Leary on Sunday night. And they released a statement afterwards saying that it didn't fall within, obviously, the policies and the behaviours agreed when Tom Ryan and Liam Moffat and various other GAA officials had sat around the table together. They had agreed that they would behave in a certain way, particularly when it came to communication and social media. And Tim O'Leary's tweet on Sunday night obviously didn't go down well, and that's putting it mildly, at the top level in Mayo GAA. So they felt they were left with no option but to terminate the official relationship, and that's pretty much where things stand at the moment.
Mike, thanks very much for setting the scene for us. That's a good backdrop. You go off and draw a breath now. And Colm, I'm just going to put it to you. I mean, we saw the statement really at the weekend, and Mayo GAA said they will not engage with stakeholders whose behaviours deviate from what has been mandated by their clubs. And in light of the recent social media comments made by Mr. O'Leary, engagement now ceased. And you can see the statement here on screen, but I suppose you were making the point maybe off air that the initial kind of designs that Mr. O'Leary had about the governance, that was welcomed by all and sundry across the GAA family.
He's shone a light. He's obviously, his background is finance, his background is he's a market trader, and he shone a light on governance and issues around money. There's a lot of money around county boards, and in some cases, plenty of treasurers around the country are snowed under by the volume of money and volume of transactions.
Colm, do we know how much money Mr. O'Leary's put in and where that money's gone to?
Well, there's $250,000 from America. He's also put in €150,000 initially in 2018, which triggered the governance concerns that he had, in that he wanted to find out exactly where that money was spent, and was it spent for what he had intended it for. And then there's $250,000, I think it's $250,000 that is currently in their account. The intention was to put it into a joint account, a new account between the Mayo County Board and the foundation. But
where does that go now, Colm?
Where does that go now is a very, very good question. It was obviously raised with the intention of giving it over to Mayo County Board for an academy, a centre of excellence, and that was the initial plan. On foot of the agreement last January, it was being directed towards an academy, but it doesn't look like it will be directed towards an academy now. Maybe some of it will find its way, but I would imagine that Mayo Charities and maybe the Mayo Ladies, I would say it would be down to the foundation to disperse it in that way, and I think Mayo will lose out. But I think they probably expected that, and that they probably, when they met on Monday night and knew what the statement, they knew what they were getting in it, that the money would likely go.
Did they react the right way, the county board, Mal?
To be honest, I think they're probably being a wee bit prissy now. Like he said afterwards, look, I was at a match having a few pints. It was a drunken tweet. There's no law against being a bit of a gobshite when you have a few pints on you. I don't know that they have to.
We just like to dissociate ourselves from that.
No, but I don't know that they have to sever all ties with somebody looking to put money into Mayo GAA. So that's $250,000. I would say they have to try and find that somewhere else.
His heart has been in the right place from the outset, and he was a very enthusiastic supporter. Obviously, shone the light on the governance. he
But
accepted.
the manager's
he
position
accepted
was
the,
questioned.
yeah, of course,
No, it wasn't.
of course.
But it wasn't, Davy. It was somebody tweeting. Let's not elevate Twitter to the status.
It's too late for that, Malachy.
But still, Malachy,
Malachy,
Malachy, you know, the highest standards are expected in all of this, and it did slant a certain way.
Sure, but
that they felt,
you can slap
Mayo,
a fella on the wrist
there has
and
been,
say,
of course,
and not get up on your high horse and say, oh, we're too good for this man's money.
I suppose they were probably mitigating against maybe future interventions, and you know, there's been a lot of spotlight. They needed this to stay quiet. They needed things to calm down in Mayo, and they took that decision. Maybe up the line that there will be some renewal again in the future, but there is a lot of money at stake there that they are missing out on. I would expect they'll be missing out on.
Yeah, it's an intriguing one. We'll see what happens. Thanks very much, lads, for that. Coming up after the break, we'll discuss all the battles in Division 2 and Division 3 this time of the Alliance Football League, so stay with us. Most years it's said that the Allianz League is probably the best competition, the fairest competition that we have in the GAA scene. This year is certainly the case because Division 2, Division 3, I don't know have I seen much like it before. You've got 8 teams battling for various positions. And Colm, that's all down to the Tier 2 Championship that comes in this year. You're judged on your final placings of the league. The bottom 2 in Division 2 slide down to the second tier, and the top 2 get a chance to get out of it. And if you reach a provincial final, you've got a way out. But there's so much to play for, and there's so many counties between both divisions locked in that battle. And it's fascinating, isn't it?
It is, surely, Damian. It's a real trapdoor in Division 2 because when you go down, the likelihood is for, we'll say, Clare, it's going to be very, very hard, obviously, to pick back up, even though they have a chance in the Munster Championship, a route. But it is very, very difficult to pick up after relegation. So there's a real trapdoor there, and even for the teams in Division 3,
Here's Division 2 column, so you can talk me through this.
Yeah, the Cavan up top. Who would have thought after Armagh, after losing by 13 points to Armagh on the first night, that they would be back up there with the raft of players that are missing? Killian Clark, Conor Moyna, Conor Rahal, Dara McVitie, all left. A lot of players wouldn't play for them, and there they are top. Armagh have been hugely inconsistent, fantastic performances at home, but went down to Westmeath last week, led by 8. Were losing by 4, and Jamie Clark bailed them out. Roscommon, they've picked up nicely. They're going well. Westmeath and Laois, but the real surprise, I suppose, are Kildare on 2 points. Damien, who would have thought that after Jack O'Connor coming in, you would expect he would have got maybe a Porrick Joyce style bounce.
It is mystery man, isn't it?
Yeah, and they have been near enough the story of that league. Like, they're going to Portlaoise on Saturday night. Like, that to me now is near enough the game of the weekend in any division. Like, Laois would love nothing more than to leave Kildare needing 2 wins from their last 2 games to stay out of the Tier 2 Championship. You know, if Kildare get relegated, that means that they would have to beat Meath in a Leinster semi-final, or else they're playing in the Tier 2 Championship. And as Colm says, like, whatever about you know, still having another chance of staying in Tier 1, once you get relegated, that psychologically ruins your season.
You have seen, and Kildare have found they've gone from Division 1 down to 2, down to 3 again, and then came back up. So there is that yo-yo effect, and when you're down, that chances are you'll keep going down. Derry went from Division 1 in 2015, was it 2015? Back down to Division 4 last year and only came back up. So it does have, that's a frightening place to be, is to be hauled down 6th or 7th in Division 2, especially with the Tier 2 threat hanging over them.
But
and
you're
Kildare
right, Damian, like Kildare, I think we all would have imagined that they would be better. Jack O'Connor coming in, Daniel Flynn coming back, Niall Kelly coming back,
Paul Cribben coming back. You know, and then you have the 2018 All-Ireland under 20s, and you would think, well, they'll get something out of that, surely, to supplement and really push for promotion. I thought themselves and Armagh would be the strongest challengers. When you looked at the outset, so many teams in Division 2 lost key players. If you look at Clare, without Gary
I was going
Brennan
to mention them,
Jamie Malone.
the underdog here, guys. I mean, I'd love to see them stay up. I mean, he's the manager of the decade for me in terms of what he's done with the resources that he's had. Gary Brennan gone this year as well. I mean, they are a good story, aren't they?
They're a great story, and like they have, you know, at the start of every league for the last 3 years, I've written them out of the division they're in. I have said no, that's the relegation will be between them and sort of 2 or 3 other teams. And
they love him, and he can get a game out of them.
And two of the games that the games they've lost, 2 of them they've lost by a point.
Yeah.
That's how close it has been.
And that's the like you take
you put Gary Brennan and Jamie Malone back in, and they win those 2 games.
Yeah, that's the difference. Okay, just drop down to Division 3 then, because I mean there's nothing between the 2 sections at this stage. Cork are obviously a little distance ahead of the rest, and after that, Malachy, you're locked on 4 or 5 teams on 5 points.
Like, I was looking at this division last week, and Derry or Down and Longford's game last week looked to me like when has anybody ever given a damn, really, outside of Down and Longford about a Down and Longford game, even within Down and Longford about a Down and Longford game in mid-February? And yet it was Longford were in second place with 5 points, but have played the lower teams.
Yes.
Down were coming up against them, needed to beat them, but Down have played the harder teams. So Down's rest of the way is Leitrim and Louth and Offaly.
Down of the heavy lifting done.
Yeah.
And
so
I think they are
go up.
very, very well placed to go up with Cork. Cork are playing Derry this weekend, and you would expect that if Cork win, that's game over. They're back up. They're out of danger. And I think, as Malachy said, I think the games that they've already beaten. They've beaten Derry, they've beaten Longford, they've drawn with Tipperary. That gives them a lot of leverage over the last few rounds. I think it will be Cork and Down. I think Division 3 will be more clear-cut than who actually comes down in Division 2. So.
And yet, but it is, as we say, though, like you're sitting here and you're talking in February, going into March, talking about Division 3 games, talking about Offaly and Down being and it is a crunch tie. Yeah. And it is the effect of the newly tiered competition and a sort of the step into the unknown about it. Like, maybe next year, maybe it won't be such a big deal, maybe we will kind of have more of a reality. But right now, we don't know how any teams are going to take to it.
We are talking about Cork and Down potentially getting back up to play in the mainstream championship at the beginning of this decade. And they were All-Ireland finalists at the beginning of the last decade. It just shows you how much it can.
It's also going to have a potential or possible knock-on effect, guys, in that a clear Tipperary Munster football semi-final wouldn't be drawn in the masses. But this time around, if it does materialise that you're playing off to avoid the Tier 2, it's going to be a colossal game.
Yeah. And exactly. And it's interesting. It's just that there is no grasp in the sort of wider consciousness yet of what the Tier 2 competition is. Yeah. You know, there's been no push on it. Like it
hasn't even had a name yet. Now it's due to be named this weekend.
At
Congress, the name of the cup is this weekend.
But you would imagine, like, if the GAA were really trying to push their Tier 2 competition, they'd be making a big deal of it now. Like, these are crunch games that are feeding into it. I'm like, you know, only nerds like us that are looking down through the tables are kind of picking out games here and there that are big deals.
When you think of the consequences of Kildare potentially not making a tier 1 championship after the Leinster Championship, no, albeit they may reach their provincial final, but the consequences of that, after obviously the appointment of Jack O'Connor an All-Ireland winning manager, 2 years previous an All-Ireland under-20 winners, being in the Super 8s, it really is stark for them.
Right, we'll see what the weekend brings. There's plenty more live Allianz League action on Airsport this weekend. The Airsport cameras will be in Healy Park as Tyrone welcome Dublin to Omagh. That's live on Airsport 1 from 7. And at the same time, across the way on Airsport 2, we'll have coverage of Mayo versus Kerry live in Castlebar. But my thanks to Mal and Colin for their insight tonight. Press Pack will be back at the same time next week to discuss all the latest happenings in the GAA world, including all the news too from this weekend's Congress. Until then, good night.